All righty, welcome in another edition of the Chico Bormann Show here on the Big Play Sports Network, and a very special edition of the Chico Bormann Show today as we welcome in one of our favorites. I just referred to him as the Italian Stallion, Bobby DiBiasio, Senior Vice President, many years with the Cleveland Guardians, and of course this weekend, Guardians opening up a 3-game series with the San Francisco Giants. It has been an amazing season to date. It is also, as we come to you live here Friday afternoon, late Friday morning, off the shores of Lake Erie at Burke Lakefront Airport, Larry Doby Day, a very special day. I've said this to you people on the air. I've said it off the air. I've told Bobby this. I love having a conversation about Larry Doby with Bobby D. So many great stories and so much to be proud of for our city and our organization, which we're going to get to here in a moment. But first and foremost, Bobby D., so great to have you. How are you, buddy?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for having me, Chico. You doing well?
I'm doing fantastic, and like you, I am, and like many people out there, loving this Guardians team as we speak. Second best record in all of baseball, best record in the American League. I remember having breakfast with you before the season started, and look, we're always optimistic, right? I honestly didn't envision this, and if you did, God bless you. I thought, maybe they could be around 500, maybe a little bit better. We didn't know about Stephen Vogt, certainly liked him. Give me your impressions, and what has been the biggest, maybe the most pleasant surprise for you?
Probably the bullpen, maybe the offense. I think you could go with both, although maybe the offense, because when you think about it, Emmanuel Clase has been the best closer in baseball the previous 2 seasons. Last year is the only closer to have more than 40 saves. So he's led the big leagues in saves 2 straight years, and he's on his way to do it a 3rd straight year. He's just an absolute beast. So maybe it's the offense and the power that we've shown through a change of philosophy and how to attack a baseball. I truly believe, and I think you and I chatted about it, I'm the most optimistic person when it comes to this baseball team, of course. And we all thought that if we didn't win our division this year, it would be an incredibly disappointing season, that we just felt we were as good as anyone in our division and have the opportunity to, because of our bullpen and at the beginning of the season, the starting rotation, we were able to pitch the ball better than anyone in our division and get back to October baseball. Did not see 54 and 31 as we head into the All-Star break here shortly. It's just been remarkable. The hitters with runners in scoring position, our run differential late in games is just remarkable how we don't let teams score late in games, and we score, especially with 2 outs late in games, which is really an incredible recipe for success. It's just been great to see the maturation of young players. Chico, we've talked about, most people think the moment a kid joins the big leagues, they should be an all-star a day later. It takes years for people to settle in. Some players are good enough that it takes 3 months or 6 months or a year. Some it takes 2 years. Some it may take 3 years. And you have to be patient as an organization to allow that talent to get comfortable at the big league level. So we play great defense. But I'd have to say, to answer your question, probably I revert back to the offense.
Bobby, I'm glad you brought up that point about being patient, because I know going into last season, expectations were very high following the year previous. And I think I've said to you many times, I know I've said it on the air, that I'll be the first to say I just expected, that progress must be linear, right? Steven Kwan's going to take that jump, and Andres Jimenez is going to take that jump. Well, it was about a year delayed. Now Steven Kwan's leading baseball, and he's got 3. I heard Hammy say this yesterday. I was driving around town. 3 12-hit games to lead 12 3-hit games to lead all of baseball, and he missed a month. And Jimenez has been great with runners in scoring position in the glove. So, so many times we just assume of, well, okay, they did this, so then the next step is this. It doesn't always work this way, but if you're patient, man, it's so fun to watch these guys develop.
The stat that you just mentioned, I thought you were going to go to the next part of the story with Stephen Kwan. I think he's obviously now officially at the top of the Major League Baseball. That happened yesterday with the number of plate appearances. It's 3.1 plate appearances times the number of games played in the big leagues. And at that point, and so yesterday he became the Major League Baseball batting leader almost by 50 points.
That's amazing.
His 12 3-hit games, he has 11 0-hit games. He's got more 3-hit games than he does 0-hit games. That shows you how that young man, his discipline, his work ethic, his ability to drive the ball out of the ballpark when he recognizes a pitch that he can do, which is the new philosophy of Chris Vallejo, our hitting coach in the organization. We were a team that really prided itself on putting the ball in play and running the bases aggressively. But then all of a sudden, we obviously knew we need, with one swing of the bat, to be able to change the nature of a baseball game. So let's get a change of philosophy. And all winter, our hitting people talked with our players when they got in the batting cages, wherever they were, to start thinking about recognizing certain pitches that they can really attack with authority. And we have done that. We've had a lot of our home run record. I should know this, but I don't off the top of my head. If we have more home runs now than we did all of last year, or close to it, or something of that nature. But the stat that, he has more 3-hit games than 0-hit games for Mr. Kwan is a pretty cool stat.
Now, of course, people have made mention of the the changes out beyond right field. Was that you with a special, like a math equation, and you were just one night you said, all right, guys, I got it. This is what we're going to do. Everybody's been making a big deal about it. So I don't know what happened.
No, it's funny. I don't know where that stuff. It's fun, to talk about. All of a sudden we opened up, right field. So therefore now the ball travels more. And you could talk to Hammy. Hammy and I've talked about this a lot the last few years. We did indeed in 1993 hire a aerodynamics company in Montreal to just study wind patterns in Cleveland upon the building of our brand new baseball only ballpark on the southern edge of downtown Cleveland. And the consensus was, the research showed that it was west to east. Yeah, the ball is going to fly out of right field at the beginning. And then over the course of 30 years, and Hammy will tell you, that's not the case. You look at our ballpark, the wind swirls, it comes out of center field, it comes east to west. It's not a consistent west to east. I will tell you that the reason we're hitting more home runs is the guys are getting more experience.
Thank you.
The guys have taken a different philosophical approach at the plate, and that's a whole lot more logical than the wind currents.
We're talking to Senior Vice President Bob DiBiasio. Guardians in town this weekend, beginning tonight, 3-game series with the Giants. And by the way, if you're not doing anything this weekend and certainly want to make plans to go out to Progressive Field, they will not be home again with the All-Star breakup coming, as Bobby D mentioned, until July 19th. So you want to get there this weekend. Then they go on, I think, a 7-game road trip, and then, of course, the All-Star break. Bobby, real quick before we get into Larry Doby and the special day that this is, trade deadline approaching. It's no secret. I think we say it every year. Everybody wants pitching. There's who's going to be available, who's a seller, who's a buyer. I've heard him, speaking of Hammy, I've heard Hammy say this, and I think I kind of agree with him. I'm glad he's saying it, that it seems like a lot of people say, well, you know what, there won't be many arms available, and the asking price is going to be astronomical. And we know that the Guardians in the past aren't just going to, give away assets for rental guys. But at the same time, there's no getting around it. Like, you can say, well, we'll bring in more bullpen arms. Hammy said, no, you've got to go out and bolster the rotation. Your thoughts on that?
Well, I think our guys are obviously well aware of that. The poker hand that is played at the trading deadline is how much do you mortgage the future for today? What's the guarantee of today? Adding to this rotation, you begin to think about, are there people within the organization that you can add that certainly can help first and foremost? Then how do you use your farm system and maybe a couple major league players to go get a pitcher in a market that's going to be so tight with pitching? There's so many pitchers who are injured, starting pitchers that are injured all around Major League Baseball. Every team is looking for starting pitching, which obviously drives up the price. So you've got to think about those things. You also have to think about, Chico, this team, and Stephen Vogt is a first-year skipper doing a remarkable job with the camaraderie and chemistry. We did it in 2022 where Tito told Chris Antonetti, Mike Chernoff, and the group, I don't want to mess with the chemistry that's built in this clubhouse right now. The reason we're winning is because this team believes in one another. And the way Stephen Vogt has gone along and has made sure every player who is a part of this position roster is active, is playing. Angel Martinez comes up. Daniel Schneemann comes up. Jose Tena comes up. They're playing immediately. They're a part of it. They don't pinch hit and sit for 3 days and pinch hit. Janeski Noel, etc. They come up and play. He uses the entire roster so everybody feels a part of the winning culture that's been created. And I'll say it again and stand on my soapbox. The last 11 years in Major League Baseball, the Cleveland Guardians have the fourth most wins in all of baseball. There's a sustained winning culture at our organization, and everyone needs to understand that. And do you blow up a clubhouse? That's part of the poker hand. That's part of the conversations that need to be had when you make a decision about adding to this roster. Yeah, our starting rotation certainly could use some assistance, and obviously our guys are well aware of that. In addition, they're all working on the fact that with a 2% chance of getting the #1 draft pick, we got the #1 draft pick for the first time in franchise history, and that's coming up Sunday night at 5 o'clock on ESPN.
Bobby,
Right
is there a
before the
chance?
All-Star break, yeah.
Not to interrupt you, is there a chance that Cherney and Antonetti are going, man, Bazzana, Condon, just walk down the hall, Bobby, break the tie. Who you got? Is there any chance that?
Hey, the latest mock draft, Chico, has JJ from West Virginia.
That's right.
#1.
I saw that.
And, 3 weeks ago, it was the kid from Oregon State, the Bazzana guy.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Who knows
Good
what
stuff.
We have pick 1, 36, 48. So 3 in the top 50, which could really bring some incredibly talented young men into this organization. Then we draft, I think, 84th. So 4 in the top 84 picks, which is pretty solid. So it's going to be interesting to see what we do. Very rarely does a major league team, in Major League Baseball draft, because it's different than the NBA and the NFL, where your expectation is that player has to walk in and change a franchise. This kid will still be in the minor leagues for a couple of years to get his feet wet as a professional baseball player. So a whole different animal.
All right, Bobby, it's certainly fun talking about a team that's 54-31 and doing the great things that they've done. But the reality is, whether they're 54-31 or 31-54, it is July the 5th. And I always, over the past few years, always track you down and want to talk about a very special day, Larry Doby Day. And I don't, I always try to caution myself or stop myself from, I don't want this to sound negative, okay? Because Jackie Robinson, of course, deserves all the accolades and everything, but it kind of amazes me. I think back to last year when Tito was quoted as saying, we asked the American League, Commissioner, hey, can we all wear 14? And they didn't do anything. This is a very special day for this organization, and it should be celebrated throughout Major League Baseball. Why is it just, he was the second guy and we never celebrate the second guy? Why is he not celebrated as much?
Well, it's our job to celebrate Larry Doby.
Okay.
We have asked and we just haven't got the answers we were looking for. So you move on and you celebrate here in Cleveland the remarkable career of Larry Doby and the fact that he endured everything that Jackie Robinson had to endure, breaking the color barrier in the American League just 11 weeks after Jackie Robinson did so in the National League and in Major League Baseball. The one thing that I always love to share to just make sure people are completely understanding of what Larry did have to endure. He integrated more cities in Major League Baseball than Jackie Robinson. You need to understand the landscape of baseball in 1947. Furthest city west was St. Louis. The furthest city south was St. Louis. That was the scope of Major League Baseball in 1947. There were 5 cities in Major League Baseball that had 2 teams. There were Boston, Chicago, St. Louis, and Philly. Had a team in the American League and a team in the National League. Then there's New York. Had 3 baseball teams.
That's right.
They had 2 in the National League. And the Yankees, of course, in the American League. So that left the National League, Pittsburgh and Cincinnati, for Jackie Robinson to integrate. And Larry Doby then integrated Cleveland, Detroit, and Washington, D.C. So he actually integrated more baseball cities than Jackie. And again, what Jackie Robinson had to endure and the fact that Branch Rickey, a fellow Ohio Wesleyan graduate, although he graduated, I think, in 1901 or 1903
it's a
or
few
something.
years before
in that
you.
stage. I wasn't there at that time. Branch Rickey he integrated Ohio Wesleyan's baseball team when he was a graduate assistant coach of baseball at Ohio Wesleyan. And he had it on his mind that if he ever had an opportunity to integrate Major League Baseball, he was going to do so. And he painstakingly, for anybody who ever watched the movie 42, it's phenomenal. And they tell the story of how Branch Rickey went through the process. Jackie Robinson was able to go to spring training or play AAA in Montreal, the Dodgers AAA team in 46. So he was integrated into the Dodger organization in 1946, goes to spring training in 47, knows most everybody on the roster and integrates. He was a gentleman in the U.S. Army. He played integrated baseball in California for UCLA, where Larry Doby was told on July 3rd that his contract, he's playing for the Newark Eagles, who had won a Negro League World Series. He and Monty Irvin taken that team, the Newark Eagles of the Negro Leagues, to the 46 World Series championship, that his contract was just sold to the Cleveland Indians. And he had to get on a train and go from New York to Chicago. And he walks into the Indians clubhouse July 3rd, July 4th and just starts to he had known some of them as they barnstormed
Right.
the big leaguers and Negro leaguers. Um, but he walks into the team. There was no drum roll. There was no um,
He wasn't even sure.
scenario that Branch Rickey had created for Jackie. So,
Right.
he's thrust in. He's a second baseman, and Joe Gordon is the second baseman for Cleveland, who had been the MVP of the league with the Yankees just a few years prior. And so it was a little bit more difficult of a entree into Major League Baseball. But in 1947, he shifts to the outfield. The coaches told him at the end of the 47 season, I'm sorry, that, he ought to spend the off season catching fly balls and play center field for the team next year, be ready in spring training. And so in 1948, he helps lead the team to our World Series title.
Yeah, the last World Series won by the Cleveland organization, 1948, and Larry Doby played a huge part in that. And we talked, one of the things that I love, Bobby, is not just Larry Doby, and I know as an organization you guys are extremely proud of this, but I think it's always good to kind of refresh people's memory. Frank Robinson, first black manager in 1975. There's a guy that, MVP in each league, and Satchel Paige. So, I mean, Bill Veeck, that's the guy that I think you need leaders, right? You need people that are going to stand up, even today, to say, you know what, this isn't right. And to hell with you, if you don't, if this is how it's going to be done, I'm going to do it differently. And Bill Veeck did that. Bill Veeck basically said, I know they changed commissioners, but he said, hey, I'm telling you right now, if I own a team, and he tried before Cleveland, I'm going to be getting these Negro League stars, whether you like it or not. And Veeck played a huge role in this, and God bless him for it.
Absolutely. Bill Veeck, just like Branch Rickey, needs to be credited for having the guts to do what he did. He wanted to buy the Philadelphia Phillies prior to buying the Cleveland Indians, and people in the National League were well aware of his thoughts of integrating the baseball team, and there was no way they were going to allow him to own the Philadelphia Phillies if that was going to be one of his plans. There was something about our great city of being inclusive and embracing diversity. The first black mayor in the history of America in an urban center, Carl Stokes, in 68. And again, you said Frank Robinson, Satchel Paige and Larry Doby, the first black players to win World Series in 1948. Something about our town that's welcoming and embraces diversity and inclusion. And these are the people who started that, who really made that attitude come to life. And I've become absolutely dear friends with Larry Doby Jr. He and I spent all day yesterday at the ballpark watching the game and hanging out and celebrating with he and his sisters and a niece today in a pregame ceremony. As his first appearance Larry's first appearance at a baseball for the American League was on July 5. He signed on July 3rd, but his first pinch hit was July 5, which is why we celebrate it today. I do a pregame thing called At the Ballpark on our radio network on Sundays. And one of my most favorite is an interview with Larry Doby Jr., who Enos Slaughter was one of the most vocal anti-integration players in baseball history.
Duke, I remember.
He ends up being the baseball coach at Duke University, and that's where Larry Doby Jr. decides he wants to go play at college because he could play safety on the football team.
Wow.
And he could play baseball. And when he told his dad that, his dad said, "You know who their baseball coach is." And Larry said to him, "Dad, you always taught me it's not how you start the race, it's how you finish the race." And he said, "You're right, son." and Larry Doby Jr. actually integrated Duke's baseball team.
Wow. So many great stories. And again, this is why we love talking to Bobby DiBiasio. Bobby, I know obviously we're short on time here. I just wanted to first of all, you guys have the Baseball Heritage Museum, which for people that don't know, it's free admission. And at the
League
old
Park.
League Park, yeah, at the old League Park, the ticket office, basically. And it's a gem. I mean, it's one of those things where if you want to, all the stuff that we're talking about and you've mentioned and more is celebrated at that museum. Go ahead. I know you're on the board.
And it also celebrates Cleveland's rich baseball history, not only from the professional ranks, but the amateur ranks, all the games at Brookside Park where there are 100,000 people. And we celebrate the diversity of baseball, Hispanic culture in baseball in Cleveland, women in baseball in Cleveland. Bob Zimmer, who truly is the owner of the Baseball Heritage Museum, Ricardo Rodriguez, who is the executive director, do a remarkable job. It is now on, if you Google places to visit, landmarks, places to visit in Cleveland, it's in the top 10 must-sees. League Park and the Baseball Heritage Museum. Go to their website and see the dates that they're open. Like most museums, they're not open 24/7, so there's different days that they're open. And if you're a baseball fan at all, it's a must-do at some point in your lifetime as a Clevelander. You need to check that one off your bucket list because they do a remarkable job there.
Bobby, I'll leave you with this. I think we spoke about this a while ago, but a few years ago, I think it was in 21, right around COVID, around that time. Peter Gammons, obviously Hall of Fame writer, and just does a great job. He wrote basically a piece on Larry Doby and for The Athletic.
Yep.
And I've saved it. This whole time I've saved it, and I will never not have it saved because it's so well written. But this paragraph, second to last paragraph, he writes, "This coming July 5th, I will look toward a picture of Larry Doby on a wall and raise a glass to his face and his heart. I will prop Vec, as in wreck, up on a table and toast it. I will play," and I love this one, Michael Stanley's "This Is My Town," and think about Doby and Herb Score, Lemon, and Sabathia. As a kid who grew up hearing New Englanders ask, "Where were you when you heard Denny Galehouse was starting?" I shall raise a glass that he did and that the 1948 Indians beat the Red Sox and changed baseball 12 years before the Red Sox finally gave into the notion that all men are created equal. It's one of the best pieces. And he's written a lot of great pieces. One of the best pieces I've ever read.
Well, yeah, I was honored to help Peter with that article. He's a dear friend and just a remarkably talented writer. And anybody who got to know Larry Doby knew him as an incredible gentleman, never said one negative word about anybody. Even Larry Jr., says, "Look, I asked my dad, not daily, but almost, who were the guys who treated you badly?" And he wouldn't even share that with his son. All he would do was share that the Jim Heagans and the Joe Gordons and the players of that ilk who shook his hand and welcomed him to the baseball team and didn't make him stand out on the field and have nobody to play catch with.
Was never booed at home either. Love that. He loved to say that. Yep.
And
loved to say that.
So, and the story too, I know you got to roll, but
no, go ahead.
He was supposed to be our first man, he was supposed to be given the manager's job, being appointed the manager.
Right.
And then all of a sudden the hierarchy decided to make a switch and have Frank Robinson as a player manager. And Frank will always tell you, they only gave me a couple extra bucks to do both jobs. I didn't get a manager's salary and a player's salary. I got one salary as a player and then a couple extra bucks to be the manager, but he knew how important it was for him to take on that role and be the first. But Larry, the one thing he told me was that he he was sort of told that he was going to be the manager of the Indians. Then he ends up being the second black manager in the history of baseball with the Chicago White Sox. So he and Helen, Larry Jr.'s mom, he and Helen, Larry's wife, the most gracious, wonderful people, and I'm blessed to have known them for decades.
So we celebrate Larry Doby on this day. We also celebrate a hell of a baseball team, 54-31, 6 games up in the American League Central Division, best record in the American League, and they've got a set beginning tonight against the San Francisco Giants for 3. Executive Senior Vice President Bob DiBiasio. Bobby D, always a great time talking to you about this and many other things, and we'll do it again soon, and keep up the great work, pal.
Thank you, Chico. Appreciate the invite. Always a treat. And our old friend Dwayne Kuiper in town as a broadcaster for the Giants. I cannot wait to see Kuip, and we'll have some fun in the press box these 3 days. And again, always a treat chatting baseball with you, sir. Go Guardians.
Thank you, buddy. So again, the great Bob DiBiasio, love talking to him. A really, really great storyteller, and so many great stories to tell when it comes to our great city, the great Indians Guardians organization as far as inclusivity is concerned, and all of that stuff. Just really good stuff. And, of course, a baseball team that's playing pretty darn well also. We'll be back to wrap things up again on the Chico Bormann Show right here on the Big Play Sports Network. Welcome back, Chico Bormann Show here on the Big Play Sports Network, and great stuff from Bobby DiBiasio, great stuff regarding the Guardians. We've got some other good news and notes going on. By the way, one of the words, it's interesting, Bohm, one of the words that Bobby D used when talking about this Guardians team, and specifically guys like Stephen Kwan, was patience, right? Patience. And I know it's not something that we like to talk about or display, and it's nowadays I know I'm sounding like an old man, and I'm always in a hurry myself, but not everything is just time cook, 2 minutes, start, done, here we go, we're done. So let me go back a few years. The Cavaliers had just traded for Donovan Mitchell. And then let me go back just recently. They lose to the Knicks in that series, in that playoff series. And it was bad, and we've talked about it many times, no need to go through. But there were so many people, and I'm not just talking fans, I'm talking media members. One after another, after another, after another. Donovan Mitchell's gone. Trade him now. If you want to get something for him, trade him now because he's as good as gone. He's going to New York. He's from New York. He was playing golf with Allen Houston. Oh, my God. His dad worked for the Mets, people. And yeah, I'm not saying that we all have that fear, right? LeBron, not once but twice, and so I get it. It's kind of the jilted lover, and you're always on edge. Is he going to stay or is he going to go? But this is a guy that still had 2 years left on the deal. And everybody, we got to trade him. He doesn't want to be here. How do you know he doesn't want to be here? Has he made, and I want to say this now that Donovan Mitchell has re-signed, which is great news and good for the Cavaliers and great for all of us, because not only is Donovan Mitchell a great player, Donovan Mitchell is a great ambassador for his organization, for the city. But let me remind you of something, okay? When everybody, media included, was chirping nonstop about Donovan Mitchell's, he wants out, he wants to be in New York. You know what Donovan Mitchell just went out and did? Played great basketball, and whenever he was asked, he said, I love Cleveland. I love the organization. And okay, some things changed. They moved on from J.B. Bickerstaff. They needed to be patient with him following that Knicks series. They did. They came to the conclusion he's not the guy to take us to the next level. He's not the guy that we want to, go forward with. So we fire J.B. Bickerstaff. Okay, that's fine. All I said was let it play out. It did. In comes Kenny Atkinson, and Donovan Mitchell's happy, and everybody's happy. But folks, this is I know it's a microcosm of our world today, and I'm as guilty of it as anyone. I'm not sitting here up on a soapbox, but for God's sake, I mean, I remember then just shaking my head. I mean, there were people here. I remember in studio. Oh, you better get rid of him. You better trade him. You better trade Jared Allen. You better trade. Here we are. Donovan Mitchell is signed to an extension. There's a good chance that maybe the Cavaliers, don't do anything. As far as, I mean, I know there's talk about Miles Bridges, but I mean, I think everyone assumed that there's going to be some sort of shakeup. Are they going to keep the two big men, Jared Allen and Evan Mobley? Well, obviously, Evan Mobley is going to get a rookie extension here soon. Jared Allen's probably not going anywhere, but Darius Garland, I think a lot of people felt like, well, he's got to be gone. We heard Chris Fedor say, not only are they kind of, energized with the arrival of Kenny Atkinson, that contract is also pretty tricky. So, there is a good possibility that the Cavaliers, for all intents and purposes, really aren't going to have this big makeover that maybe some folks anticipated.
Does the Cavs, if they do kind of let it ride with everything except the lone change being Atkinson and some coaching staff tweaks, are your expectations any greater this year compared to last year? And I mean, is this something do you think you'll go into the season feeling confident with that sort of same lineup?
Yeah, because I think this is where, and again, I'll say it again, patience, right? We expect Darius Garland, and I'm not going to tell you that I'm not concerned, but you bring in another coach who is well known for his offensive ideas, and he learned under Steve Kerr, and we've been through all of that. But if they say the same, who's to say that Darius Garland with Kenny Atkinson doesn't take a step? I mean, Evan Mobley. I mean, there were people earlier in the year. Evan Mobley, you know what? He's never good. He's over. Guys, it doesn't happen overnight. I mean, we talk about it with the Guardians. Bobby D was talking about Quan and Jimenez and all. It doesn't happen overnight. And so, yeah, I'm not going to lie to you, Bohm. I certainly have some concerns. Hey, regardless of who the coach is, can Garland and Donovan Mitchell, play together, both ball dominant? Yeah, I mean, all of that plays into it. I think some of it you hope Kenny Atkinson is able to get the most out of that. And you also think, and I believe, that Darius Garland, he had a rough year injury-wise. And it wasn't just injury. They were injuries when you're talking about that jaw, like where he couldn't even really work out. He couldn't get his BP raised. He couldn't eat right. Maybe it will work out. We're always ready to make the next move. And sometimes you've got to do that, okay? But it's not always the case. Kevin Stefanski, a couple of years ago, got to get rid of him. He's ended up being pretty good, right? I mean, you just I'm not saying let it ride. I don't know. Maybe Darius Garland will get moved. I'm sure they're certainly turning over every stone, and they should. But let's just pump the brakes a little bit. Maybe these guys are still very young and still have an opportunity to, be the best versions of themselves with a new head coach in town.
Yeah, and Garland and what he can do on the floor, especially with Mitchell out there, it's going to be one of the most important things that I think fans are going to be watching for here as we get set for the season later this fall. With that said, I do wonder, so say they do theoretically improve and you come closer to the potential that you hope to get with those two guys in the backcourt. Can players like Max Strus and George Niang, who really had disappointing outings in the postseason, if they actually rise to the occasion with this core four, as we like to refer to them, is that enough to propel this Cavs team to a championship run?
Well, okay, let me say this, because you started off by saying, and I didn't answer it directly. You said, are the expectations great? Yeah, they have to be greater. I mean, you still have a good young team. You still have a good young nucleus. You're adding a coach that has great offensive ideas and whatever. And yes, these guys are going to be a year older, so they should be a year better. When it comes to, championship, I would think you're looking at, hey, let's get to the Eastern Conference Finals. Let's make a run at an NBA championship. I think what's interesting is, didn't we think last year that Strus especially, now I don't want to put Strus in the category of Niang, and no disrespect to George Niang, but he was awful. I mean, he got to the point where that he was a liability in the postseason. It was, no, you're better off just DNP. And I liked Niang throughout the season. I mean, he played 82 games. But Strus, I think, is going to be a better. Maybe a lot of these guys are going to be better versions of themselves. But do you still have to tweak the roster? To your point, Bowman, it's a good one. Yes, I think you do. But I just don't think it's going to be. I don't think anyway. The big makeover that we're waiting for or have been anticipating, certainly before Kenny Atkinson came on board. Because I think, correct me if I'm wrong, didn't it seem like it was a foregone conclusion that whenever they named their coach, whoever it was going to be, that Garland could be on the move, Jared Allen could be on the move, both could be on. And now it's like, well, wait a minute here.
Yeah, no, granted, the offseason is still young, and it's possible
You're right.
that maybe this is sort of a leverage play from the Cavaliers to drum up some more interest. But it is, and I think it does remind me of, just to draw the Cleveland comparison, it kind of reminds me of the Guardians going into this season, right? Where the only acquisition that they made really was Austin Hedges. And so the fan base were pretty up in arms about that. It felt like the team was just sitting on their hands, not doing anything to improve. I think a lot of us discounted the leap that some of these young guys would take from last season to this one. And so that is...
myself included, yeah.
I mean, yeah, look no further than that to trust that maybe it is possible that there could be a significant jump in some of the performance. They had a coaching change with the Guardians, and now you have one with the Cavaliers.
And I guess that's my point of all of this, is just... I get it. Like, there are times that you got to fire coaches and fire front offices and blow it up. But I think we got so immune to it with the Browns during those horrible years that it's like, oh, well, your team, whether it be the Cavs, the Guard, they're on a 4-game losing streak. You better blow it up. No. So we'll see what happens. By the way, real quick, Bohm, your prediction. The Cleveland Guardians on the clock now. Bohm is the general manager. Now, keep in mind, there is money involved here. I know people are like, well, it's always money involved with the Guardians. Yeah, it is to some degree. Signability, and what's that bonus going to be, and can they spread it out? I'll ask you this, Bohm. Is it Charlie Condon from Georgia, Travis Bazzana from Oregon State, or other?
I thought Bobby D brought up an interesting one with that kid out of West Virginia. And
JJ Weatherholt. Yep.
Yeah, I did think it was down to Bazzana or Condon. And I was originally Team Condon, but I am currently Team Bazzana. I'm on the Bazzana
bandwagon. It's
Bazzana Bonanza.
Bazzana, banana, whatever. Tomato, banana, Bazzana, it doesn't matter. Great player.
The point being, yeah, I think that overall, I mean, he's got the more diverse skill set. I think that his hitting, just based on the numbers that from my reading up on him, the numbers look like he's more effective on the road. He's a better hitter outside of the strike zone. He swings less at bad pitches. Like, this guy just seems like even though you've got the better power numbers out of Condon, this guy just seems like the better long-term, more all-around effective hitter.
Be interesting to see what they do again Sunday night on ESPN. So many exciting things going on. And again, in wrapping up, I want to thank Bobby DiBiasio for joining us, Senior Vice President. The Guardians will be on the clock with that number 1 pick, but this is a team 54-31, 6 games in front of Minnesota. Minnesota just lost Royce Lewis again to another injury, but the Guardians just keep on keeping on. But probably going to need, not probably, they do need to bolster that rotation. We'll see what happens before the deadline. But get on out, celebrate them this weekend, and, of course, celebrate Larry Doby Day. 77 years ago, he made a huge impact and continues to make that impact throughout Major League Baseball, sports, and, of course, our great city of Cleveland. So thanks to Bobby D. Bohm, great job. Most of all, thanks to all of you people for watching, listening, both, and or whatever. We will talk to you next week. We're going to be out at Firestone, I believe, next week, Bohm. We're going to be doing we're going to be on a golf course for a senior event. And looking forward to being out there, and who knows who we'll see and what we'll talk about. It's going to be fun. You'll want to tune in. More to come from the Chico Bormann Show right here on the Big Play Sports Network.